I have the distinct pleasure of introducing a friend of mine. His name is Mike Carleton. Mike has done so much stuff within the peer support world. He's helped to develop peer support programming. He's in getting his doctorate right now in mental health. He's going to be a force to be reckoned with such a long career in law enforcement, peer support, negotiation. He's the full package. But better yet, he's such a fantastic guy and he's a friend of mine. So, Mike, thanks for being here with us today and for presenting on this topic. I'll let you take it away.
Wow, thank you, Dr. D. I really appreciate those nice words. So a little bit about me. My name is Mike. I retired in 2020 from the Tempe Police Department. I did 20 years there, or 21 years. Most of my time was working gangs. I was a gang cop, working the middle of the night shift. When you work nights for 21 years, this is what happens to you. How I get involved in something like this? I joined two teams when I had 2 years on. That was our crisis negotiations team and our peer support team. And I was blessed because I had a boss that taught all over the world. And every time he left town, he hated leaving his gang guys to run around the city. So he would send us somewhere in the world to go train. And because I was a negotiator and peer support, those trainings go a lot hand in hand. And I was blessed to be able to travel the country and work with a lot of other teams and see what they're doing. And I think, like most team members, my first few years was really just doing what we do, just behind the scenes, checking in on folks, being that sounding board. And then we had a line of duty death, and I really got turned into a different experience when it was doing family liaison stuff like that, going back to DC. We had a suicide, again, another powerful turning moment for me. And eventually I promote and I become a team lead. And I was mentored by two great team leads, Rick and Amy, both founded our team back in the early 90s. And there's a lot of frustrations with peer support, just being a checkbox for management. And I just kind of watched to see what Rick and Amy, how they managed that and navigated that. Well, they still got work done. Eventually they both retire, and they pushed me very quickly to the front of the line. And I was like, hold tight, hold tight. I really enjoy being a part of the team. If I'm gonna take this team over, I'm not gonna get treated the way I watched them treated for 18 years. So I had a very frank discussion with our new chief. Fortunately, she came in with a mental health perspective for first responders. And she laughs about what I tell her, but I was like, it's nice to meet you, Chief. I do have the skills to do it, but I won't put up with the bullshit that I watched then. Her eyes were like, oh my goodness, what did this guy just say to me? And it was great because we got that out of the way. And she kind of gave me full reign of it. I got pretty passionate about it, made some significant changes when we moved forward. And what I'd like to do in this presentation is just share some of that stuff. Because I know there's a lot of team folks here, or people that want to be on teams, or perhaps you have a team back at your agency and it's just not quite working. Let me tell you, I've been all around the country, and that is so normal. But here's the good news: it can change with the right messaging. And perhaps today I can give you some data to help bring it back and say, hey, this is why this is important, because we're still fighting the old school mentality. And we have cops and firefighters and dispatchers committing suicide, and it's just not acceptable. And it doesn't have to be that way. There we go. All right, so my goal, I think with this crowd, it's pretty clear. I don't think there's a lot of stigmatizing with mental health, but if I can share a story or two, because I've learned some pretty cool stories from this webinar last year, that you get the right story and you can share that, it helps to take away that stigma. And that's our biggest hurdle as emergency responders, is just getting through that stigma. The rest is common sense, it's science, it works out really well. We're going to touch a little bit on cumulative stress and PTSD with our populations. And then I'm going to give a couple strategies that I've learned over the years, hopefully with a little colorful dialect that helps take it back and say, hey, we can clean this up before we're doing it the other way. All right, so little disclaimer. I'll be checking in with you guys. If I share a story, normally I'm doing this class in person. And if we're doing a class in person, hold on 1 second.
Oh, you want to talk?
Yes.
I wanted to talk to you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm on here for a couple of seconds.
All right, a half hour, but
Okay.
sorry about that. Working in my office. All right, so self-checking. I'm going to share a couple stories that are likely to trigger you. Unfortunately, I can't see you. I don't know if you're going to be okay. You can just put me on mute, take a walk around the house, but please have some sort of plan. So I'm going to talk about suicide, and we'll talk about police, fire suicides. We'll talk about some child stuff, and just have a plan if you're getting that reaction, and then check in with each other. I just speak from the heart. I hope we have chiefs on here from all the different bureaus. I want managers. I want to hit you between the eyes with some stuff. We did this in our police department, and I was never more nervous presenting, but after it was done, every single supervisor said the same thing. That had to be said, and thank you for saying it. And lastly, if we share stuff, let's treat each other with respect. All right, so this is not Tempe Police Department's message statement for our peer sport team. This is Mesa Police Department. I have no idea what Tempe says. I didn't read the orders a whole lot when I was working. But I liked what it said, and it changed just the numbers. When I took over the team, we had 20 team members that were all ancillary positions and 2 team leads. I increased the number of team leads to 5 for one reason only. I hate being on standby, and when you're on a peer sport team, you're busy. At least you should be busy. We have 40 team members plus 5 supervisors or team leads. That's 45 people. Our department has roughly 350 sworn and 100 professional staff. So that leaves about 10% of our entire department. Somewhere in there, you can find a peer support team member. What I'm hoping to pass on to you guys is you do not need to be on a peer support team to do peer support. Hopefully we're all doing it. There's a benefit coming from the team, and that's privacy and confidentiality. But for the most part, we just have to appreciate there's nobody else on this planet that can hear these stories and the traumas and get it. You know, if you're a police officer, you get an NOI, a notice of investigation. The very top line says you will not talk about this to anybody but your doctor, your attorney, or your spouse. Well, if we look at the CDC, the #1 contributing factor across suicide is isolation. And as a department, that very first sentence, we put an officer or any employee through crisis. It's critical. It's extremely stressful, let alone the critical incident on the back end of it. And then we said, hey, you can't talk to the only people on the planet that understand what you're going through. Your doctor does not understand. Your attorney does not understand. And your spouse, we won't talk to because we try to protect them. And when we isolate from the rest of our family, we spend a third of our lives together. So brothers and sisters wearing uniform, bad things happen. So there's some things we got to change. So I want you to be peer sport until it's time not to be peer sport. We'll talk about that. Traditionally, our peer sport team very reactionary. For years, we were not proactive at all. And that was just part of the training, as part of the culture, what we did. You know, if you had an officer down, a firefighter down, multiple jurisdictional incident, multiple casualties, that would happen. We would end up bringing out the team. And I love showing up. I'd bring my little cooler ice chest full of water. I'd listen to you guys make fun of me, right? I had my water, my Scoobies, and like, oh, here comes the water boy, the tissue team, the Care Bear Swan, team hugs a lot. And I loved every one of them because you guys were, you know, busting my chops, which you're doing in front of me. But that's great. That's our humor. That's a stress mechanism, coping mechanism. We're not there doing anything crazy. You're in work mode. You're doing really, really well. We're just trying to keep you hydrated. If you want somebody to chat with, we're here, but usually there's not a lot of chat going on. You're just working. But what we are doing is assessing. And I'm looking, who's got the 1,000-yard stare? Who's hyper vigilant? Who's completely checked out? Who's shaking? Who keeps washing their hands? And we just watch. And we let them know, hey, we're here. But then I give you 2 or 3 sleep cycles, and then our team starts coming back in and checking on you. And I tell the team members, like, hey, don't ask how somebody's feeling, because for us, it's a defense mechanism. We don't feel anything. For guys, we have 2 emotions: we punch stiff and we laugh at stuff. But these traumas, these stressors cause so many other emotions as guys, as alphas, as type A personalities in this job where you're not allowed to emote. As soon as you say the word feeling, we tend to put up that guard. But you can ask them, the first responder, and say, hey, how you been sleeping? We have 0 guard for that, because we kind of laugh like, let's sleep. But if I check in with somebody, I say, how you been sleeping? It's like, Mike, I'll be honest, I haven't slept since that incident. I can't get the images out of my head. Like, all right, well, it tells me a lot. And it gives me an opportunity to start working with that employee. The next thing that happened is if I start checking in with somebody, like, Mike, I'll be honest, I didn't sleep at all that first night. It was pretty bad. But the next day I went to the park with my wife and kids, and my daughter started harassing one of these ducks, and the duck started biting her diaper, and we started laughing so hard we were crying. And I just kind of broke down in the park, and I slept like a baby the next 2 nights. Like, all right, well, that's good. Your brain is managing that trauma pretty well. And somebody else be like, first night was tough, but it's not this incident. It's the same call I worked 8 years ago. I can't get out of my head. I'm a little frustrated. It's still there. I'm like, all right, we got this. And that's our opportunity as team members, start poking through those opportunities. Say, hey, I got an opportunity here. Either we can empty our cups right now, or maybe it's something bigger, and I got to get them to a clinician that speaks our language and help process that trauma a little bit further. But whatever that is, it's traditionally reactionary. Let's be proactive. When I look at Dr. Dara, I mean, I'm guessing he's pushing up probably 300 pounds these days, bench pressing. He's going to look around the gym, and he's going to look over and say, hey, Mike, I'm putting up a new personal record, 320 today. Can you go spot me? And of course, you look at me, I should be spotting a guy bench pressing 320 pounds. Well, when I go over to help Dr. Dara, it's his job to lift that weight. It is not my job. And that's what peer support is. It's not our job to take on the trauma. It's not our job to take on the garbage or the problem. It's there to support another first responder that just needs somebody there. Too much, we isolate, and we got to stop it. So when I'm spotting him, I'm motivating him. I'm making sure he's safe by using proper technique. He's not going to hurt himself. And then I'm just there to encourage him. He's going to press that weight. I'm going to help him rack it, and we got this. We got this. And that's what this is. So if I can destigmatize that for you a little bit and encourage you who are not on peer support teams, hey, that's all you're there to do. Because the number one way to process trauma is you got to get it out. And it's not about the story. It's about the trauma and the emotions behind that story that we never share. So if you're there for somebody, they trust you, you have rapport, listen for that verbal vomit and just let it get it out. Don't try to solve the problem. Don't be there to judge anybody. Don't take notes. Just let them get it out. And then you do the same thing with somebody else you trust. The only time I want you to stop being peer support if you're not on the team is when an employee starts getting a point and they're full verbal vomit and they're just getting it out and get it out. And they're like, and then on top of all that, I got 5 weeks of evidence to be impounded in my personal locker. You're like, oh, stop. We do not want to drag you into an internal affairs investigation because this person is finally offloaded. Admin issues are normal when your brain is in crisis. When the amygdala lights up, the frontal cortex kicks off, and when that's not working, your decision making is poor, your cognitive thought process is poor, your problem solving is poor, your ability to communicate is poor, and yes, you have administrative issues, you have other challenges because that's what our brains do. It's normal. And unfortunately, we're still treating these normal reactions like they're discipline, like you're a bad person, instead of like a medical condition. So as we continue to push for that, that's what it should be. Your peer support team members can listen to all those admin stuff because we're protected, at least in Arizona, we're protected by statute. This is the Officer Bill of Rights, 38 ARS 381111. For those of you around the rest of the country, some of you have statutory protections. Others of you have it written in your orders, you will remain confidential. That's very important. If you're in a state that does not have this, hey, call me, right? I'm in a state, guaranteed. I'm not going over to your state to go talk to your chief about your internal affairs thing. In Arizona, if you work for police, fire, emergency responder, if you're a nurse, anybody in this type of field with protected speech, if you tell me something, it's the same privacy and privilege you have as if you told your doctor or your attorney. That's powerful. I cannot be called into internal affairs. If you're going through a civil court process, it cannot be called in. So say it's custody battle or divorce. If there's a criminal issue, I can't be called in. This is powerful. This is good because the only person that can hear this story is another cop or firefighter or dispatcher doing this job, and that's so important. For the first 12 years I was on the team, we did not have this protection in Arizona. We just had an order. It got tested a couple of times. Commanders and chiefs threatened team members, hey, I ordered you to talk. And fortunately for our team, we never talked. And you take whatever it is they're going to give you. They're not going to fire you for it. But you take your lumps and you survive those over the years and you come back. But the importance of that benefit behind the team is so crucial. So if you're on that, if you're listening to an employee because they trust you and they're verbally vomiting, and then they start to get something that you shouldn't be hearing, just stop them. You've done the hard part. You've done the great work. Now call on your peer support team member. That employee will continue to share because they've already opened the gates. The hardest part of that negotiation is just getting the gates to even open. So thank you for doing that. We can hear the rest of the stuff. I have 2 duties to report. If you tell me you're going to go commit a crime, I can't do that. But in 22 years of peer support, I have never had to deal with that. It doesn't happen in our population, which is good. What I do have to deal with is a danger to self. It does not say who I have to report to. I've never reported to a commander or a chief. It's not their business. This is medical. I have to get you an appropriate medical professional, and we do that. We have them vetted on the back side of the thing. These teams understand that. They work with these clinicians. We don't take you where we take all the homeless people every night. We take you to a 5-star place and get you taken care of. And eventually you want to come back to work, and the clinicians working with us understand, hey, it has to be labeled appropriately for us to come back. So Mike comes back to work after his little psychosis he had because he didn't sleep for 5 days because his anxiety was through the roof because it's his 3rd baby drowning. It's like, hey, doc, I feel a lot better. I want to go back. It's like, all right. The note comes back to HR. He's got a sleeping disorder because that's what it is. And there's not a chief on the planet that cares you've got a sleeping disorder because they got one too. This is normal, but we got to do it the right way. Because there's so many times you do it the wrong way, they come back. And my favorite story is the dispatcher, 30 years on. She works a child code, and normally she's great. She processes good. This one would not go away. So she goes on her own, goes to our EAP website, finds a nice lady that's close to her, says, oh, we got shared things in common. The dispatcher starts to share her story with this clinician, and the clinician breaks down, starts crying. And then she finds out how much the dispatcher is not sleeping and wants to hospitalize her, wants to take her off the phone, all this other stuff. All of a sudden, the dispatcher's in crisis mode, handling, she's right back at work, taking care of a clinician that should be taking care of her. And it was a horrible situation. Fortunately, I catch one of the story, they share it with me. I say, hey, can we try one more time? And I promise you won't have that experience with this person. And we got to do that. But if we keep it in the shadows, we don't share these stories, that's what's happening. And then everybody gets a really bad taste and not know what's going on. All right, our risk factors. So I know we've covered this a few times this week, and it's good. We're going to keep coming. I come at a different angle. I love that little guy up in the corner. I mean, that's me. This stuff weighs on you. It changes the way you look. You can look at a room full of cops, or you can go to a insurance convention, look at a room full of insurance people. We don't look the same because of what this chemistry experiment is doing inside of our bodies. But when you're at work and you start seeing these significant risk factors, they're tough. to note sometimes, because we do such a great job of masking, but somebody's going to see the change. And it's usually the partner sees it before the officer, the wife sees it before the officer or the husband, the dispatcher's partner sees it before the dispatcher. Us doing the job see it last, because we could same dude or do that in the mirror every day, and that's all we see. And we don't notice the changes until we leave this profession, and we're like, oh my God, I was so unhealthy. But you start to see it in your peers, changes of behavior, attitude, achievement, attendance. You know, we always joke, hey, if they gain a day off, they take a day off. They're not lazy. They got an injury to their brain. It's just not allowing it. It's lowering the responses, and they are you're seeing that change in chemistry, and it's causing them to get sicker. Their immune system is down. Their ability to just not be in hypervigilant mode just starts to fail, and the body starts to shut down, and it's normal. So when we see that, instead of saying, hey, you retired on duty, you're worthless, you're lazy, let's go back a few years and say, hey, you weren't that way here. What happened? Instead of saying, what's wrong with you, say, hey, what happened to you? And let's start working there, because we can heal what happened to you. But if we have our own stigma and say, hey, what's wrong with you? You're a piece of garbage, you're a scumbag, I don't trust you, you're lazy. We didn't hire that. That develops. And statistically, that develops in about 25% of us. So it is normal. But then we don't like that repetition work, so we start self-medicating. That's where you get the blues, bras, bills. And we do that. But when and it works until it doesn't work. But when that cyclone runs out of gas or gets too much gas in it, and those balls start to fall because you're juggling too much, bad things happen. You know, we lose our jobs, we lose our spouses, we lose custody of our kids, and suicide. Suicide's a big deal. I'll teach a class like this, and I'll get a lot of calls from other supervisors. Hey, Mike, can you go check in on Timmy? You know, he's going through a divorce at home. Looks like he might have a foreclosure on the house. And I just dropped an investigation on his desk. I just want to make sure he's okay. 100%. I will go check on Timmy. The problem is I'm going to check on Timmy, and Timmy's going to tell me, hey, Mike, I'm fine. Right? Yeah, he's fine. He's fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. He is fine. He's normal. The reason he doesn't want to talk to me is like, who am I? I want to get into this intimate stuff in this guy's brain to help him get it out and help him process it. But he didn't like to live it the first time he experienced it. He really doesn't want to relive it. And he really doesn't want to relive it with a stranger. So I turned back to the supervisor and said, hey, does he trust you? Does he have a rapport with you? If it's not you, is there somebody else on the squad? Let's give that person a chance to break that shell. And if you can do it and get Timmy to start verbal vomiting, you've done 99% of the work. When you get to the part where you're like, ugh, Timmy, stop. I can't hear about the domestic at home or the property that belongs in evidence that's in your locker, or your drug count's going to be off on your medic bag, whatever it's going to be. Just hand over mouth, stop Timmy from talking, call your peer team in. They will listen. He will talk to them, I promise you. And then we'll also know the appropriate resource to get him there. We'll deal with the administrative stuff appropriately once the dust is settled. But our goals for this should not be like, oh, you're already stressed off. You're already on the brink of being over the edge anyway. But you know what? Let's drop some more stress on your basket. Let's threaten your career on top of that. It's like, oh, what is wrong with us? So we want to avoid that. All right, a little bit about PTSD. I know we talked about this. I studied PTSD for 15 years until we had a suicide in the Tempe Police Department. And when Garrett killed himself, I had never heard anything about first responder and PTSD. Our department did not handle an employee who was undiagnosed PTSD and self-medicating with alcohol as well as we should have. We learned a lot from Garrett's death as a team member, as a team, as everything else. We implemented a lot of changes since then. When I sit with these employees who are in crisis and they're trying to navigate an investigation, a potential termination, A divorce is critical time for officers and firefighters. Is I go with them to the doctor's appointment. They sign the permission slips and say, hey, you need somebody who's not in crisis to help hear this stuff. I go visit with them with their attorneys. And I sat and I did that for year after year after year. And then we have a suicide. And then maybe it was a couple of years later, I turned 40 and I just lost my mind. I'm like, I can't take it. We had 2 more employees at the time taking the ride, the administrative ride. I saw what the chain of command was doing to them, actively ignoring medical advice, not letting them bring in medical opinions because they didn't want to hear it, because they had a goal: fire the employee. He's a piece of garbage. You tarnish the badge, get rid of him. Meanwhile, I'm in doctor's appointments with these employees going, you guys are doing what? Why would somebody do that to another human being? And we're going through the science. I have attorneys saying the same thing. It's like, hey, the fire department doesn't deal with this. Why is the police department doing this to another employee? And I'm like, because we're crooked. Most importantly, we don't realize it. Our supervisors were abused children. Now our supervisors are adults and they're abusing children. That is normal. That's human nature. We have to train that. We have to train that out. So I'm 40 years old. I'm sitting in my hot tub outside in the backyard and I'm losing it. I'm literally losing it. So I called the wife out. I said, hey, babe, I can't do this anymore. I have to say something, and I'm going to say something. I'm probably going to get fired. I was 100% convinced I was going to get fired. And she's like, just do it. We'll be okay. So I was like, all right. So I had that motivation to go forward. I brought forward a training similar to this to our command staff and every frontline supervisor. And I just held my breath and just waited for it, because I talked specific technical stuff. I hit supervisor between the eyes. I did not hold back, and the response was overwhelming. Like, thank you. That needed to be said. I'm like, this is easy. This is medical. This is science. This is not anything else. We can deal with medicine and science throughout the discipline process, throughout the review process, all that stuff, and still have honor and integrity and ethics. And at the same time, prop up a great police department and their employees or a fire department. But when you actively have to close doors and shun that information just so you can get the outcome you want to feed the torches and the pitchforks, that's unethical. That's illegal. And that's what happened in Phoenix when you had Officer Craig Tiger. So for the rest of the world, we had our techie one. We wasted a suicide. It was horrible. We did not do a good job as a police department. Fast forward a few months, and Phoenix PD has an officer who's a great cop. Been on the job 15 years, and all his partners were looking around saying, Craig, something's different. You're not the same dude anymore. And he does what we all do, right? Hey, I'm fine. It's like, no, seriously, dude, go see somebody. He's like, no, I'm fine. Then he gets a DUI one night, and it's like, bro, what are you doing? Go see somebody. This is not you. Something is different. So he goes, all right. I'm going to go. So he goes, sees a doctor, a series of clinicians. It's a battery of assessments. And a couple of weeks later, they come back and they say, Officer Tiger, you have an injury to your brain. It's called post-traumatic stress disorder. It's caused by the job. You serving the citizens of Phoenix for 15 years being a cop. Here's the good news. We're going to fix it. And Craig's like, no shit. And he's like, yeah, no shit. So he goes back to Phoenix PD and he does what no cop or firefighter ever does. He raises his hand and he says, I need help. I have an injury to my brain and it's caused by the job. And his chief says, you can get all the help you want, but you're never going to be a Phoenix cop anymore. And they throw him away like a used piece of tissue. And Craig goes home and kills himself. Well, Craig had been very open about his injury because he didn't know. And he was looking at his brothers and sisters with the same injury that was undiagnosed. And he shared that. And everybody knew what happened. And they rose up and they said, this is BS. And they fired that chief. You cannot be the leader of men and women that you send out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, demand that they treat people with mental health disorders with dignity and respect. And then they come home with one of their own disorders. And you say, well, we're going to treat everybody with a mental health disorder with dignity and respect, except for you. You tarnish the badge, you're a piece of garbage, and we're throwing you away. It has to stop. It has to stop. You have to actively ignore medicine to say that was appropriate. So they fired him, but they didn't stop there. They went to the legislature, worked with his family, and they passed in Arizona the Officer Great Tiger Act, which changed Arizona to say, hey, police fire. If you have an employee that's experienced one of these 6 things, and the very first one is, have you ever seen somebody die or recently dead? And every cop and firefighter is like, this week? Yeah, I've seen one of those. He goes, well, normal doctors say that normal human beings are going to have a reaction to that. And that's traumatic. So therefore, the department must take care of you. They must give you 36 visits to the doctor of your choice, not theirs. They must figure out how they're going to pay for it. And they must make you whole again. So if you're a firefighter driving around a hose and you bust your shoulder and your back, what are they going to do? They're going to put you on light duty and pay you to go to rehab. All right, that's good. You know what? That same firefighter has to work CPR on a dead child. All right, we're going to do the same thing. Light duty job, pay to go rehab. That's the basic thing. Start protecting these jobs. Start treating people like they're humans. After Garrett's suicide, I met Dr. Renee Benefar. She's a psychologist in Scottsdale, Arizona, and 15 years of PTSD training, all veteran. Dr. Benefar was the first person I met that done studies on first responders of PTSD. And then her studies, for my studies at school, they're matching consistently across the country. We're getting the same studies. 15 to 25% of us are diagnosed or undiagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder. It's normal. 100% of us have post-traumatic stress. You can't do this job for more than a couple of minutes and not experience trauma and the stress caused by that trauma. The D, the disorder, all that means is your coping strategies, good, bad, or indifferent, aren't working anymore. And when they start to fail, and you start to see it affect your personal life, your professional life, physiologically would change, right? i.e., you're getting in trouble at work, you're getting divorced, you got diabetes, cancer, all this other garbage. That's a disorder, okay? We don't have to wait till we have disorders to start treating post-traumatic stress. But often we wait for a triggering event, you get the DUI, all right, let's go treat it. The average person waits 10 years to treat a mental health disorder. 10. If you found out you had cancer, you'd be at the doctor today. So we got to change that statement. Give yourself permission to go get taken care of. Who gets PTSD? There's nothing wrong with you. It's what happened to you. So we got to understand that's normal. On the police side of this fence, you had to take a psychology. You had to take all these assessments to say you're healthy. You have no significant mental health disorders, and you compartmentalize stress and keep going. It did not say you're immune to the effects of stress, and you're not. You're normal. So once we start having those normal physiological responses, once the hormone levels are kicking in and we're switching to fight or flight dozens of times a day, year after year after year after year, those switches get broken. Our relays, they're forgetting the technical term for that. Anyway, the wiring gets rewired, and all of a sudden, your evolved part of your brain is not functioning like it used to. This is lit up all the time. You're hypervigilant. You're calling out the emergency codes. You're switching the use of force really quick, or you're completely checked out. Your complaints go up. Your admin sucks. Now let's talk about your home life, right? Domestics go up. Divorce goes up. You're kicking the dog, barking at the wife, and you're running out the door. You're hitting the bar. You're out buying a boat. And if you live in Arizona, you're in the middle of the desert. But if I buy that boat, I got to go work overtime. If I'm at overtime, I'm forcing my chemistry to stay up, and it feels good. It'll feel good until it stops working. And then you're home, you're crumbled, you're on your second, third divorce. You have to enter the divorce recovery option plan, right? Our drop programs to keep working longer. And we're not realizing that's what it is. And then the worst part is management's on the other side going, oh, Mike's home life is starting to affect his career, right? The divorce, the domestics, the alcohol. It's like, no, chief. Mike's work life is screwing up his home life, and you're just starting to see it, and you want to take responsibility for it while he's out serving your community 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have to understand what's happening. That way we can treat this and keep moving forward. Who do you get it? You can directly experience it, but it doesn't happen, right? We talk about being in the foxhole, getting blown up, and then ending up on a clock tower somewhere sniping co-eds. That's Hollywood. What happens over and over again nightly is witnessing, seeing the injury accidents, the fatalities, going through and seeing the child issues, the domestic violence, seeing all the parades that are coming out, just bashing your career over and over again. Our poor dispatchers hearing the crying mothers and the fathers over the phone, begging for their child's life to just come and sit there. And then they don't get the closure of, hey, what happened? At least as a first responder, we can go out and touch something, move it around, we get a little bit of closure, even though it's not good. But take care of your dispatchers, give them the rest of the story if they want it. And then lastly, learning about it. If you're a police officer, every other day, one of us is getting killed. That means every other day I go on social media, somebody's posting RIP officer so-and-so from Florida. I have no connection to any of these men and women that are dying, but it does take me back to the several men and women that were my partners here in Arizona that died in the line of duty. So you relive that trauma vicariously over and over again. It's real. This is what's happening. Develop your protective factors. We can predict going out in our work, I'm going to be dispatcher with a horrible call screaming mother. I can predict being a firefighter. I'm going to do CPR on somebody that's going to look like somebody in my family. I can pretend, I can understand as an officer, I'm going to go to a really bad accident and watch somebody take their last breath while I'm trying to get the door off of the door open. What's your plan? Develop the plan ahead of time. Understand you got to empty that cup and get rid of all that garbage. Just somebody that you trust that can hear this without destroying your families, telling these crazy stories. And just do that. What's my workout routine going to be? What's my diet routine going to be? Because it starts to fade when the only thing open at 2 o'clock in the morning is Wendy's, you know? But we can predict this. Let's be mindful of what's happening and okay with ourselves. Like, hey, my coping strategy is not working anymore. Let's take it to the next level. Let's go find a professional and get this out. And the benefits we have, you know, Officer Craig Tiger Act passes November 2018. October 2018, guess what? We have the exact same benefits. The only thing is we never used it because we said, hey, I need help. Well, now the thing is, hey, they have to take care of you. We took out, you need help. Cops and firefighters, we love our entitlements. We go. Peer support for 22 years, handing out the EAP card. Hey, you need any help? Here you go, here you go. 1% return, people use their benefits. Now it comes out, Craig Tiger comes around. Hey, did you know they have to take care of you? Boom. 90 to 95% of the time, they're going to go see somebody. They're going to use that benefit because it's an entitlement. And I'm not saying you need help. Tempe PD wasted our suicide. Phoenix PD took theirs to the next level, and it was awesome. Officer Craig's Tiger suicide saved hundreds of lives just in Arizona. I work under one grant that we've had 138 officers in 18 months and firefighters get to services. That wasn't happening before 2018. So we gotta keep pushing that momentum forward. In 1999, I had my very first peer support training, and it was horrible. It was a commander came in with babies on the rookie squad, midnight squad, and she comes in and looking back, somebody must have gotten fired for something. So that's how these trainings come along. And she does her training. She says, hey, here's peer support, CISM, curriculum and stress management. If you want to survive this job 20 years, here's what you need to do. Don't hang out with cops off duty and stay away from the 3 Bs. It's like, all right, well, let's translate that into science. Isolate yourself from anybody who can understand what you're saying, i.e. don't hang out with cops off duty. And then look at the 3 Bs and not acknowledge them for what they are. They are symptoms of a problem. You are self-medicating, either retail therapy, it feels good. The affairs, it feels good. The alcohol, it feels good. It's masking the other chemistry that feels really, really bad. And we can either focus on those or use them as opportunities to get into an employee and say, hey, you're self-medicating. What's happening? Let's get you some help. That's the difference. So it was a horrible briefing, but it was great because it marked my brain that day. And then over the years, I see it dissolve over and over again. And it gives me an opportunity to come and share these stories and say, hey, these three Bs are awesome because it gives you as a supervisor, as a manager, as a partner, an opportunity to come in and say, hey, I got you. I got you. Here's what we're going to do. I didn't hire you this way. Something's off. When you take a picture of PTSD, it's an injury to the brain. You can take a picture of the activity, it's rewired. We can fix that. We can rewire it back. Then lastly, have the courage. Have the courage to chat. These are other normal negative coping techniques. I'm sure in your departments, you never heard anybody complain about anything, right? Listen, when you complain about something, it releases really cool feeling endorphins. Feels good to complain. It's toxic for the agency, but it feels good. The other thing is blaming others. Like they point that finger, they point that finger and they look at Mike. I don't trust him. He's going to get somebody killed. I don't want to be around him. Listen, you got any idiot like that in your department pointing fingers at other people complaining about them? Understand two things. One, they are making themselves feel better. They're self-medicating. It's unhealthy. But two, all that finger straight back to their nose. That person is struggling. That person has an injury. That person needs some help. You see the aggression go up. And then I was a negotiator for 20 years. Every single jumper, every time an ASU kid wants to jump off some building in Tempe, every single time somebody from the ground says, oh, Jesus, just go ahead and jump already. And you're like, oh my God, what has happened to humanity? Every time. But I can't tell you how many times I've turned around and heard somebody say that as a cop or a firefighter. And it's simple. It's called compassion fatigue. Your capacity for empathy is gone. It's not your fault. It's broken, right? When you guys start going to couple therapy to save your marriage, the counselor starts telling you, hey, your ability to emote is broken. You've masked it too long. We got to fix that so your communication with your spouse can improve. Your communication with your kids can improve. Okay, that masking is very important, but it's also detrimental to our relationship. So we got to understand that and be proactive in fixing that. All right, how do I manage this job for 20, 30, 40, 800 years? I keep it simple. And this was passed down to me 20 years ago by Dr. Sarah Howard. I'm going to keep passing it on to somebody else. Hydrate. Hydrate. You are under stress. You will go through more water than if you ran a marathon. Two reasons. One, fight or flight kicks on. Digestive system shuts off. So it's just water passing straight through. The other thing that happens, you are so tense. Your guts, your muscles, your bones are tense. That can happen. And it's just wringing out all that hydration. So you want to hydrate more water than you normally take. I don't tell cops and firefighters and dispatchers, hey, stop drinking caffeine because we live off it. Just more water. Caffeine is a diuretic, alcohol is a diuretic, and you piss out more than you take in. More water. When you're irritable, you can't sleep, you can't make a decision, that's dehydration. That's all that is. And that's what we see when we're under stress. The next time you go to a funeral of a friend, you're not under stress, you can see a little bit of crisis. Watch them try to make a decision about how to get all the flowers back to the house. And you see them struggling. It's an easy problem. But when your amygdala's lit up, frontal cortex is shut off, you can't make decisions. So everybody else jumps in. Hey, Marilyn, we got this. You head back to the house with your brother. We'll take care of the flowers. Because that's what we do, jump in and help each other. But that's what's happening in our brains. Next thing I want you to do, I want you to get a mild to moderate workout. Some of you guys are young and into burpees, you're freaks. The rest of us go for a little hike, walk around the parking lot, a little bike ride, something to get good endorphins going. Because when those good endorphins go, you get the little other side. It allows you to face your fears. It allows you to put down your barriers a little bit because the next part, you're not going to like it, but you have to do it. You have to get it out. You have to verbalize the trauma, the emotions, so we can take it from an emotional memory up here and put it back into a long-term memory way back here. That's not going to screw us up every time we pass that intersection and relive that accident. That's the hard part. You didn't like it the first time you did it. It's going to be painful when you do it again, but there was somebody you trust to make sure you're safe. And that's how we get that out. But you need a healthy brain that's hydrated. And those endorphins help us get through that. The healthy endorphins, not the drunk at the bar. I love you, man. I love you. You know what we should do in this place? I know. It's not good. It's not good. It's not helping the memories go where they need to be, the emotions. All right, your brains are constantly seeking closure. Dun, 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 dun. Y'all did it. Y'all did it. This is normal. We have to share these stories about what happens because we have time lapses. We have spatial differences. We have auditory exclusion. We get tunnel vision. You're like, I swear, Timmy, you were sitting right next to me when I was doing CPR. It's like, bro, I wasn't even there. I was on the other side of town working the perimeter. Wow, how did that happen? What is going on in my brain? I can't figure it out. We got to give each other closure. Your dispatchers need to know, hey, how did that call end? Ask permission to give them the information, but if that kid was just choking on sunflower seeds, slap it on the back a couple times, he's fine. That would help that dispatcher know, hey, I can put that one to bed. I'm not going to sleep wondering subconsciously what happened. Understand your chemistry experiment. Every time fight or flight kicks on, for us, it's dozens of times a shift. You don't even realize it. You are screwing up your hormones. It affects cancer, diabetes, pancreatitis, gastroesophageal reflux disease, ulcers, all that stuff, gout. Understand what's happening. You're a puppet to your hormones. You are not in charge until you recognize what's happening, and now you can start to take charge and become that puppet master over your chemistry experiment. Do the steps you need to do to start moving forward. During your shift, recognize I probably can't sit and meditate and go woosah. I ain't got the time. But you can sit there in your patrol car, your fire truck, in your dispatch seat and say, hey, let's do some clenching. Clench everything up, recognize wherever all the tension is, and then force it to release. Just takes a few seconds, but I can do that several times a day to recognize, hey, I have some tension built up. I have been experiencing anxiety and not realizing it. I can start to take control of my body and be mindful of it. And that leads us to intentionality. Some of you guys have 14-year-old kids at home. You study with them for a test. They know it back and forth. And then they go take the test and they get in front of the proctor and the timer and the stress, the amygdala lights up because of anxiety. And the frontal cortex shuts down, so the memory is gone. And they fail the test. And then they come home, you're like, what's wrong with you? You knew every part of that. Listen, it's happening to us. We got to learn through that. We got to learn how to shut that switch off. And then the next thing is, when they're 14 years old, you tell them to go clean their room. Like, I don't want to go clean my room. But when you're an adult and you know you have to clean your room, you can't act like a little kid, like, oh, it's not my problem. No, we have to go clean our rooms as adults. We got to take care of ourselves. Be mature about it. You're not a teenager. You have to develop frontal cortex. Let's make some decisions to take care of ourselves. It's our responsibility. And here's why. You deserve it. Your family deserves it. Your kids deserve it. The citizens you're serving deserve it. And your partners deserve it at work too. Take care of it. I'm running out of time, but have some hobbies. Be mindful of what you're doing when there's yourself. My dog, Hannah Banana, every time I go home, I'll be beat. When you sit in that lazy boy and you're just decompressing because you created a safe environment at your house, that's awesome. It allows you to get audio exclusion. It allows you to get tunnel vision. All of a sudden, somebody's saying something from the kitchen. It's probably something nice. Like, hey, do you want something to eat? What do you want for dinner? We don't hear it because we're zoned out. Just watching TV channel, boom, 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 or the phone. And also understand in front of you saying, hey, what is your problem? What do you want? Like, oh, I'm sorry, babe. I did not see you. I did not hear you. You're not lying. You didn't. Your chemistry shut off so you can rebalance that stuff. And now they're getting upset because you're at work, you're fun body. At home, you're a dick. You're not a dick on purpose. You're a dick because the chemistry levels have to repeat. If you get home and you jack yourself up because you got to go to the kids' game, you got to do this, you got to do that, that's okay. You can do that for a little while, but you will crash. And you're going to crash at home, on the way to work, or at work. Something bad is going to happen because we're still not allowing the chemistry to settle and balance. Good tiger. All right, I am out of time, but I want to thank Dr. Dara for letting me share a little bit with you guys. I still do peer support around the state of Arizona. I still travel the country and share my stories and learn from other people with topics like this. So you guys have any questions, that's my cell phone number, that's my personal email. But most importantly, if anything, just you're normal. It's okay, and you deserve to be healthy. So let's take some steps. If you work with an agency that has a screwed up peer support team, give me a call. That's part of my business is getting some help to those teams. They are good people. but they've been abused. They don't realize what a good team looks like. Let's show them. Let's give them some tools to get that done. And with that, thank you, sir.
Hey, Mike, thank you very much, my friend. That was excellent. I see a lot of comments here as well coming in, and I don't know if we have any questions per se on this, but I do have a comment that actually stands out and has been repeating itself too, which is the dispatchers and call takers, forensic technicians, CSI folks in departments, they tend to suffer a lot of trauma as well in the job, as you know, but they don't fall under the Craig Tiger Act. Some agencies, as Lauren was saying, do support these folks to be able to get annual wellness checks and do that, which is really amazing. But what could you say, like in terms of being able to help support those folks? Is there a way for your company to step in and help?
Yeah, so two things. The first thing, because not everybody's in Arizona, on October 2018, before Craig Tiger passed in the law, we had the exact same benefits. We had an EAP program that would give us 6 to 12 visits. We had insurance. We had a workman's comp. We had all that stuff in place. We had a shrink for the department that anybody could use, but nobody was using it. Craig Tiger just gave us permission to use it by mandating the agency had to take care of us. The only thing we changed that day was the narrative. Now, for my brothers and sisters working in agencies or in positions that aren't covered by this law, give yourself permission to use your other benefits to get the help you need. But there I am saying it again, help. I don't need help. Listen, somebody calls 911, we give help. We don't ask for help. So understand the bias we have in this for saying, I'm fine, we're normal. Take that opportunity. Now, if you are in Arizona and you work in anything law enforcement, first responder, dispatch, detention, records, ID, call me. This grant I'm working under for peer support allows me to send you to a vetted clinician that understands it. And this isn't only for you. This is you, your significant other, or your kid. As long as we relate it to some sort of trauma on the job, and trust me, everything happening in your house is related to the trauma you brought home.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let somebody tell you it's not what's happening. That's what's happening. You brought it home. Your family's trying to adjust, and this is what's happening. But this grant will pay for the first 5 visits for you or your family members to go. If we run out of money, we go to the 100 Club. 100 Club, we need some help, and they throw in some more money. Once we get to the end of those visits, guess what? Crisis is over. You realize what's really happening. The stigma generally released, and you're like, hey, let's use those cool benefits I got, because this is working. And so that's what I want to try to do. Get rid of that stigma, get rid of that barrier. The barrier is just us. That's what that is. You have great benefits at most of your agencies.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That's solid advice. I think too, people have tried out EAP programs. They've been burned by EAP programs. And so they're afraid to reach out to their benefits because they don't want to get channeled towards an EAP that may not understand them. But we do have right, don't give up. Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. I think that we have a lot of agencies now that really have stepped up to specialize in first responders, and I agree with you. Don't give up. Just yeah.
And don't think you're good enough to go on the site and figure it out yourself. If you've never done this and worked with mental health professionals, it's not easy. I've been doing 22 years. I can still tell you it's not easy. Not everybody's a dog. But go to your team and ask them, hey, who do you recommend? Because they got it. They work with them every day. And our teams, we all meet in Arizona and other states once a quarter and exchange notes. Hey, who's got this? Who's got this? Don't do it. And then lastly, it's like dating. You're probably not going to marry the first person you date. If you meet a clinician, they could be a rock star, but if you guys don't gel, it ain't going to work. That's okay. That's normal. Nobody's going to be upset when you leave. Just go to the next person, give it another shot, and explain to your peer team, hey, I didn't connect with this person because of this. I had one officer tell me, no offense, Mike, but he just doesn't shake hands the way I do. I'm like, I get it. I got somebody for you. And it was so great because then he was sitting through a PTSD class, with, we had a female instructor who was a great clinician also, and she shakes hands even softer than the guy was doing. And he comes up to me and says, "Hey, can I go see her?" I was like, "Yeah, but she doesn't shake hands very hard." He goes, "Doesn't matter, she's perfect." I'm like, "All right, there we go."
Yeah.
It's about the personality. I get it.
Good fit is a
And they
good
get it too.
Yeah. Yeah, a good fit is a good fit, man. And you need to have that trust and that relationship to be able to make it a good fit. Well, I agree with you. I think the bottom line is don't give up trying. There's always someone that you could find, and as you said, you're not going to marry the first person that you're with most times. So, Mike, thank you very much. Thanks for being a resource for me, for being a resource for so many people in our community, for always being there for people in need. And I know that you're continuing on this life's journey to continue helping people post law enforcement career. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
And thank you, sir, for everything you do for everybody and done for me in the past. So